They've one feathery body, 2 long legs, and 3 unique heads, each with their own personalities. They can use all 3 of their brains to devise complex tactics and strategies, and now they've joined the races at the Eos Island Battle Arenas to be the very best and leave the competition in the dust. Welcome to the Pokemon Unite Character Spotlight featuring Dodrio, the triple bird Pokemon.
Hello everybody, Jake your resident content cowboy here, yeehaw, as I'm going to talk about my favorite Pokemon inside Pokemon Unite, the one and only Dodrio. Dodrio is a hit-and-run speedster who specializes in diving in and out of fights while dealing massive damage. Her unmatched speed makes her nigh uncatchable as she roams all across the Sky Ruins to fight and run down her enemies. Dodrio requires expert trainers with a need for speed who can deftly utilize her unique scoring and targeting mechanics while keeping her on the move to make the most out of her passive. It's a lot to keep track of, so let's begin at the starting line.
Ready, go!
Doduo and Dodrio's passive Runaway has 2 parts. When near enemy Pokemon, this Pokemon gains a small boost to their movement speed. Additionally, this Pokemon becomes increasingly faster the longer they're in motion, up to a cap indicated by the sprint gauge below the health bar. Slowing down or stopping entirely depletes the sprint gauge rapidly, so be sure to watch your speed and keep it high. When scoring, Doduo divides up the Eos points evenly between their 2 heads if possible, and takes turns scoring one after the other. After all, 2 goals are better than 1. Similarly, Dodrio will divide up the points 3 ways before taking turns to score. After all, 3 goals are better than 2. However, for the purposes of scoring items like attack weight or Eos cookie, Doduo and Dodrio must score all their points for the items to grant their stat boosts. Doduo's basic attack becomes boosted every 3rd attack, dealing additional damage. This Pokemon gains a stronger boosted basic attack when they reach and maintain their max speed. Performing a basing attack in this state will have Doduo charge forward in the direction they are facing, dealing damage to enemies in the way, and reduce ability cooldowns if this attack hits an enemy. Sprint boosted basic attacks can also traverse over small walls and other obstacles. Note that unlike normal basic attacks, Doduo and Dodrio's sprint boosted basic attacks will not automatically turn to attack enemies. Doduo's first basic ability is Peck. Doduo stops and jabs her beaks forward, dealing damage to enemies hit. If the sprint gauge is full, Doduo dashes forward in the direction she is facing, dealing bonus damage and consuming the gauge. Note that a sprint boosted Peck can traverse small walls and other obstacles. Doduo's second basic ability is Quick Attack. Doduo dashes forward and gains increased movement speed for a short duration and deals damage to those in the way. If Quick Attack hits an enemy Pokemon, the move's cooldown is slightly reduced. Like Peck, this ability can traverse small walls and other obstacles. Once Doduo levels up to 5, they evolve into Dodrio for getting Peck to learn either Tri-Attack or Drill Peck. If Dodrio puts her heads together to learn Tri-Attack, she swings her 3 heads together in a cone, damaging enemies and randomly applying one of 3 effects: Burn, Freeze, or Paralysis. If Dodrio's sprint gauge is full, Tri-Attack instead shoots out 3 ranged projectiles in a designated direction, with only the first projectile that hits a target applying a stronger Burn, Freeze, or Paralysis depending on its type and color. Burn decreases an opponent's attack stat and deals damage over time, and Freeze decreases an opponent's movement speed, while Paralysis decreases an opponent's attack speed and movement speed, albeit to a lesser degree than Freeze. After this move is used, Dodrio's next basic attack is Empowered, dealing additional damage and healing Dodrio for a portion of her max health. Dodrio can hold 2 charges of Tri-Attack to use one after the other. When the move upgrades at level 11, the basic attack following this move heals even more health than before. Additionally, sprint boosted basic attacks will reduce Tri-Attack's cooldown if it hits an opponent.
You'll almost always want to use the sprint boosted version of Tri-Attack for the additional damage and range, unless you need a quick burst of damage to finish off a low HP opponent. Why attack once when you can do it 3 times? Tri-Attack is the only move in her arsenal, not including her Unite move, that allows her to aim independent of her movement. This gives Dodrio some flexibility in her positioning and allows her to keep some distance while dealing damage. Though the debuff effects are random, you have a pretty good chance of slowing your opponents with this move, making it a decent option for chasing and escaping. Tri-Attack is often used to soften enemies up for you and your allies from the outskirts of battle before charging in with your sprint, boosted basic attack, or other abilities to finish them off.
If you're feeling peckish, Dodrio can instead learn Drill Peck. Dodrio drives her sharp beaks forward, dealing damage with each of her 3 heads. If the move is used while going full speed, Drill Peck shoves enemies forward, consuming the gauge, and rapidly deals damage to enemies based on the percentage of their max health while moderately reducing incoming damage during the dash. When the move upgrades at level 11, Drill Peck's cooldown is significantly reduced and additionally heals Dodrio for a portion of the damage dealt to opponents.
Once again, Drill Peck on its own may give you enough damage for a quick KO on a low HP opponent, but you'll almost always want to be running at top speed for the extra damage and the massive push that you get. Compared to Tri-Attack, Drill Peck requires Dodrio to be in the thick of the fight. Its shove, along with its high damage, makes it ideal for initiating fights or following up on allies. Or it can be used defensively to push opponents away from your allies or important objectives. In order to get the perfect angle of engagement, you may want to circle around the battle space to try and hit as many opponents as you can at once. However, be wary of abilities that slow or hinder you, as it will drop your sprint gauge, effectively nullifying your engage potential. A well-placed Drill Peck can sometimes single-handedly turn a fight or skirmish into a runaway success. And that's what Dodrio does. It runs away. Successfully.
Once Dodrio reaches level 7, she forgets Quick Attack to learn one of 2 sprint gauge recovery moves, Agility or Jump Kick. If Dodrio learns Agility, she puts some nitro in her steps, gaining a decent increase to her movement speed and gauge fill rate for a moderate duration. When the move is activated, Dodrio briefly becomes immune to hindrances while jumpstarting her sprint gauge by a fixed amount. However, when the move upgrades at level 13, Agility instantly brings Dodrio to full sprint.
Agility is one of the 2 ways Dodrio can quickly get from 0 to 100 and make use of her full sprint gauge again. Skilled trainers can preemptively use Agility to try and cancel out hindrances thrown at Dodrio, but it's generally best used after depleting your sprint gauge. The added speed lets Dodrio stay extremely mobile and allows her to dodge abilities and reposition effectively. Make use of the boosted speed gain to string one sprint boosted basic attack after another to either escape from harm or rapidly reduce your cooldowns.
If trainers want to give Dodrio some hops, they can teach her Jump Kick instead of Agility. Dodrio leaps feet first in the direction they are facing. On contact with an enemy Pokemon, Dodrio uses them as a footstool, dealing damage and stunning them briefly and leaps away or over them. Enemies in the landing zone take damage as well and are moderately slowed for a brief duration. Dodrio can also use walls and other obstacles to launch herself into the air and can choose which way she leaps. Dodrio gains a significant boost to her sprint gauge after vaulting over enemies or small obstacles. However, only footstooling enemies will reduce Jump Kick's cooldown on hit. At level 13, Jump Kick also stuns enemies in the landing zone for a brief moment.
Jump Kick can be used to jump over enemies and obstacles to gain better positioning, or make a daring escape. Like Agility, this ability's main purpose is to boost and keep your sprint gauge at full. Trainers who can land Jump Kick consistently are rewarded with the ability to combo Dodrio's abilities and sprint boosted basic attacks together for big stuns and big damage. Missing this ability grants no boost and can leave you in a less than ideal situation with little to no escape, but so can losing speed after you make your jump. But don't worry if you can't get it at first, it definitely takes some practicing and getting used to before you're good at it. Remember that this ability isn't aimed independently, but rather is aimed in the direction of movement. Make sure you're aware of where you'll be after using moves like Drill Peck or your sprint boosted basic attacks so you can move accordingly.
When Dodrio finishes lap 8 and gets to level 9, she learns her Unite move Triple Trample. Dodrio becomes unstoppable and runs at breakneck speed to a designated location. Dodrio will automatically find the most direct path in autopilot to her destination, navigating around terrain, as well as player-made obstacles. Enemies in the way are dealt damage and are briefly thrown into the air. Afterwards, Dodrio gains a boost to her attack stat for a few seconds while her sprint gauge charges faster than usual for an extended duration.
Dodrio's Triple Trample is a high-impact Unite move for starting and following up on engagements for your allies, particularly if the enemies are grouped up. Knocking up 2 or more enemies followed by your other abilities can quickly shred opponents of their health and put your team ahead of the others in seconds flat. Triple Trample can also be used to dive straight onto the enemy's backline while doing some collateral damage to their front line due to its long range and unstoppable nature of the Unite move. However, the further away the trainer sets Dodrio's destination, the more aware trainers will have to be about how Dodrio will path to the location, as well as how long it will take. Using this Unite move from long range carelessly can force you to join the fight at an awkward angle or an inopportune time. The Unite move can also be used in a pinch to run away or maybe even turn fights around, but as always, your mileage will vary. When the game starts, Dodrio can be effective in lane, making use of her sprint-boosted basic attacks or peck to secure wild Pokemon KOs. Her unique scoring mechanic also makes it easier for her to score goals compared to most other Pokemon, as oftentimes you can simply keep scoring at least half your points until your score speed becomes too quick to stop. Dodrio is extremely agile, as both Quick Attack and her sprint-boosted basic attacks can serve as a dash to create distance between her and her opponents. However, Dodrio can also be played in the central area to gain a fast track to evolution and gain access to her primary damage abilities. Tri-Attack gives Dodrio some range and poke to deal damage from distance, while Drill Peck encourages trainers to utilize her burst damage and hindrances to engage and disrupt fights. Dodrio thrives when she's ahead of the competition, utilizing a hit-and-run style of gameplay to get in, deal damage, and get some knockouts on lower-leveled opponents before they have a chance to catch up. Once she learns either agility or jump kick at level 7, Dodrio gains even more tools to leave enemies in the dust. Agility allows Dodrio to quickly regain her sprint gauge with a speed boost to reposition, while sometimes ignoring enemy hindrances, while Jump Kick gives her the ability to dash up and over enemies or obstacles to reposition and create combos. By consistently dipping in and out of fights, enemies are forced to switch their attention back and forth between Dodrio and her allies, which can cause discord and a lack of focus amongst the enemy team. Once major objectives begin to spawn, it's time to gather with your teammates. If the early game went well and Dodrio's level 9, trainers have a huge advantage going into the objective fight. Dodrio can help deal damage to objectives to take it down quickly, but can also serve as a lookout with her high speed and mobility. Alternatively, trainers can set Dodrio up in the tall grass to ambush unsuspecting enemy Pokemon, but remember to keep her sprint gauge full by spinning in circles. Use your abilities in Unite move to quickly deal with your opponents and secure the objective for your team. Once one objective has been claimed, Dodrio can make a quick detour to the opposite lane to lend a hand, or feet, I guess I should say, to the fight. This is also an opportune time to head into the enemy central area and take some of that delicious farm. Trainers should be able to look for opportunities to score in between major fights to rack up points for their team. Dodrio's speed and mobility, along with her unique scoring mechanic, makes it relatively easy to score points even if you aren't scoring everything. When trainers are scoring with teammates, remember to use the 3 heads you have to do some quick math and figure out the best way to score to ensure the maximum amount of points possible when the goal zone breaks. When it comes to the last lap of the match, Dodrio should be wandering the sidelines looking for a good angle to engage opponents or lone Pokemon to try and pick off. Find enemies that are grouped up and triple trample right through them, following up with your other abilities to decimate health bars, or make a beeline for the enemy's backline to make quick work of their fragile damage dealers. Dodrio's speed also makes it possible to try and backcap or score while opponents are otherwise occupied to exert extra score pressure. Just be careful not to do this, when your team really needs you. Trainers should only do so when they are sure that their team won't be disadvantaged by Dodrio leaving, but if there's any doubt, stick with the team. You don't want to be black flagged on the final stretch. Strategize, outplay, and outrun your opponents with Dodrio's 3 heads and 2 feet to secure that number 1 for the team.
Time's up!
If you're done stretching your legs and are ready to head to the races, head on over to the Eos Island Unite Battle Committee to check out your Unite license for Dodrio, the triple bird Pokemon. And a big thank you to our guest star, official Pokemon Unite caster and the content cowboy himself, Spraggles, for providing his voice, insight, and personality to this character spotlight.
Thanks for having me. Love you. Bye, everybody. We did it.